right, welcome back to World Crisis Radio. That's Phil Berg, ObamaCrimes.com. And remember, those of you who are coming at this from the left liberal side or the peace movement side, if you have a president who cannot produce a birth certificate, he is blackmailable. He's not your president. He's the president of whoever can blackmail him with the knowledge that he has no birth certificate. So that is intolerable. And maybe that explains why the constituencies that Obama pandered to are now so disappointed, because he didn't pander to them. He didn't do anything. And in particular on the war escalation in Afghanistan, on the sellout to the private insurance companies and big pharma in the health bill, and then also the other things that he's done. There's an article here in the Washington Post how he's offended a list of about a dozen groups, all key constituencies, unions, women, LGTB, and so on down the line. Nobody satisfied with Obama. Well, yes, he's a Wall Street puppet, and one of the mechanisms of being a Wall Street puppet is that you're blackmailable. So that's, I think, a way to look at this, and this got to be clarified, because otherwise you've got a constitutional crisis, which is what you have right now. Now let's go through foreign affairs in a couple of segments. First of all, the coup in Kyrgyzia. What is this? It is clear that Russia is winning in Kyrgyzia. Putin has been on the phone with the new prime minister, Otunbayeva. Otunbayeva, going back to the Soviet era as a diplomat, a veteran politician. Her connections all go to the Russian and Soviet sides. And Putin has said now that this guy Bakiev, the president who has been ousted, Putin says that Bakiev stepped on the same kind of rake as his unfortunate predecessor, Akayev, who was driven out in the color revolution, the tulip revolution of 2005, right after the Ukrainian orange people power coup, color revolution. This guy, Akayev, had said, well, we're not going to have that here. And then NATO intelligence and the CIA and so forth turned around and hit him with a people power coup that brought in Bakiev. There are regional tensions. Bakiev is from the underdeveloped south. The more cultured and more advanced northern part of Kyrgyzia is much more Moscow-oriented. Russia says that they did not instigate the coup. Well, we don't know, but we can see that they seem to be winning. At the beginning, the new government said that they were going to oust the U.S. from Manas Air Force Base, which is the key logistics hub for the war in Afghanistan. Now they've said, no, they'll just be the status quo, but that lease now comes up in July. That has to be renegotiated. That would be a chance for this new government to oust the U.S. from that base. There's tremendous resentment against the Pentagon, because the Pentagon entered into crony deals with the Bakiev clan, where they were getting $50, $60, $70 million a year in rake-offs from maybe that was the rake that Putin is talking about. They stepped on the same rake-off on this Air Force base. So it means that the U.S. position in Central Asia is collapsing. This is an example. It may indeed be that some of these rebellions were spontaneous, but God knows they don't stay spontaneous very long, and I'm always skeptical about spontaneity. It can't be excluded. The Russians are there at the Kant Air Force Base. So it looks like, again, the Russians gaining ground as the U.S. puppet Bakiev falls, and this base is now up in the air, whether that's going to be there. Then we get the satraps revolt in Afghanistan. Karzai playing the China card, Karzai playing the Iranian card. We've got Fuad Ajami here in the Wall Street Journal talking about the decline of U.S. power in Central Asia. Yes, indeed, but he doesn't really go into the China side of things very much. The U.S. wants to say that it's Iran doing it because they want to attack Iran. China, they're a little bit more hesitant in branding them. What we have this week is that after saying that the U.S. was involved in vote fraud, specifically that Ambassador Peter Galbraith, this holier-than-thou imperialist thug and torpedo, this is what Karzai had been saying, that Galbraith did vote fraud, that Karzai has now said that he would like to join the Taliban, that the U.S. wants to make him into a puppet, that the U.S. is an occupying force along with NATO, and he would like to join the Taliban to form a national resistance against the foreign invaders. Well, interesting. Remember that Eikenberry, as well as Galbraith, right, the U.S. ambassador, former General Eikenberry, along with Peter Galbraith, had been strongly anti-Karzai. Galbraith now says that Karzai is a drug addict and that he's been using too much of the heroin production of Afghanistan. Ooh, that is hurting. And look, people are being asked to fight and die for this regime. It's time to get out. It's time to liquidate this entire insane thing, because with the decline of the U.S. imperial position, it becomes harder and harder to maintain these extremely advanced outposts of empire. Ukraine has now announced that there will be no joining of NATO. Even the commission to study it has now been abolished by the new president, Yanukovych. The whole crew of Orange Revolution, NATO agents and IMF agents has been ousted. So China gaining in Afghanistan, Russia gaining in Kyrgyzia, even though Kyrgyzia has a long border with Russia. Now, in terms of the basic strategy, as we go into this nuclear stuff, remember, Obama is supposed to be Neville Chamberlain, but Neville Chamberlain properly understood. In other words, he is somebody who is a posture of studied appeasement, a studied weakling, with the idea then that you're going to get other people to fight while you hang back on the edges and laugh and benefit and pick up the pieces. And that is the so-called tertius gaudens. And the strategy, I guess, in U.S. geopolitical parlance is buck passing. The idea is play Russia and China against Iran, if at all possible. Play Iran against Russia and China. This hasn't been working very well. The color revolution in Iran is now obviously a failure. But still, the idea is be nice to Russia, try to be nice to China if you can, and try to lock them into a course of confrontation with Iran. Now, be nice to Russia would be the U.S.-Russia START II treaty. Everybody comes down to 1550 warheads. Medvedev and Obama signed it this week. We'll look at this in more detail, but it's essentially a gesture of this type. It's a very shaky deal. Foreign Minister Lavrov of Russia has already said if the U.S. starts building anti-ballistic missile defenses outside of this treaty, which only covers the offensive side of weapons, then the treaty may have to be liquidated. There's also some question about getting it through the Senate, right? Will the Republicans try to block it in the Senate? Certainly for this year, we can forget about it. This will become an issue at a later point. And we'll talk about Obama's nuclear strategy here in a minute when we come back on World Crisis Radio.